which government, however. All right, so just for the sake of argument, we'll call it 7 o'clock on the 28th of October, 2019. This is the Jamaica Selectboard meeting. First order of business, to call for any additional late additions to the agenda. I did not have on here, through my own error, put in the town meeting minutes for the water study, so we'll add those in when we do the select board minutes. And then also we have a letter from SEVCA that arrived today that I'll add to the agenda. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
I'd like to just give a quick update on some information on the bridge.
Oh, okay. Oops. We'll liven things up with the minutes. The minutes of the October 14th Select Board meeting are to be adopted. They're all sent out electronically. I assume if you didn't, there should be copies in your folder. If you all had time to look them over. Any additions, completions, corrections? Oh, list of additions. Here you go.
Make a motion to pass the minutes as presented.
I have a motion to pass.
Second.
I have a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Let's move on. Thank you very much. We'll pass the minutes for the 14th. Moving on to the minutes of the 15th, which is not on the agenda, but one adding.
I have a question.
Sure.
I remember you giving an opening statement, and I don't see that in the minutes.
The water study?
Yes,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Does anybody remember what I said?
You gave a brief overview
We can put
of some of
that
the
in just
issues that were
an overview. Yeah.
Yeah, that's enough.
That's a good point.
But it's just, it.
Wasn't all that memorable.
Well.
Okay. He opened the meeting at 7:15, and then Paul gave a quick history.
Should we put, at the end of the minutes, it gives the final count, should we put that the question failed, or that the... Should we say that it failed? I mean,
We can say that. Final vote says yes, 38, no, 72, motion failed.
the question.
What's that in?
Yeah.
I was gonna say at the very beginning too, to open up that motion we should put the warning in the minutes.
Yes, I intended to, but like I said, I did it from home, so I didn't have it right there, and I was just trying to get it done. But yeah, it should have been at the beginning, the
The
warning.
warning too.
Yeah.
Did you want the warning, you want to put it in
I
front?
think
Yeah.
we should put the warning in, and then we
Probably
said,
in
vote,
front.
you know,
Yep.
water measure failed.
Because that was one of the things you also talked about.
Yes.
I move we accept the special town meeting water study minutes from October 15th, 2019.
I have a second.
Second.
Okay.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, motion carries. Okay, next item of business. Time sheets for the town office, solicitors, highway, and transfer station, and the select board orders. We will sign them at the end of the session, as is our practice. I'd like to remind everybody that the local hazard mitigation plan open meeting, the second one, is scheduled for 5:30 on November the 4th, which is the coming up Monday. Number 6, discuss and possibly award the bid for the mill building roof. I'll turn to Greg for that.
Sure. As we discussed last week, we had put it out to bid again, to redo the roof on the old town shed, using the insurance monies that we had gained or gathered last summer. We had received one bid from a company called Primo Roofing out of Rutland. Some of the questions that were asked in the last meeting was, the most specific one I took away was to his, where he used the term time and materials, which sends up some red flags, but he had said that his estimate for the installation was in fact the $12,025. So the time and materials was just a reference to show how we got to that number. And then if anything additional would be needed, obviously that would come back to us. We could write that into a contract, so if there was some work necessary for some of the underlayment, or anything like that. But his total estimate to remove the old corrugated roofing, replace with new, was $26,195.23. Previously, we had spent $1,000 of our collected insurance money to patch the hole that was in the back of the roof. We had received from the insurance payout, we had received a total of $26,500. So we're within $600. There is also I don't know if you want to call it what we call it, but if we do go over, we can submit those back to the insurance company for additional funding, so we could potentially get the $600 back. So I think that was our main questions from last meeting. I don't know if anybody else had any
Did
additional.
we get sent that to look over?
We did. Sarah had
She has
scanned this in. That was some of the discussion too. We hadn't seen it at the last meeting. It was just an open bid, or we opened the bid.
Yeah.
So it was sent out
Yeah.
after the meeting. I would like to make the proposal that we accept this bid. I think it's very reasonable. We can work on the contract to fit this term, and also, state any additional required work would have to come back before us. He stated that he could most likely get to it within 2 weeks and have it completed within a month. So, which is also great.
Okay, the only glitch in that thing is an extra $600, since we didn't budget for it.
Well, I'm just saying, we could submit back to the insurance company to have that.
If you talk to the insurance company, is that submitted, is that automatic, or is that?
No, that's written in that, let's see, I just gotta find out, says, town chooses repair, has the, I guess, I'm sorry, I gotta find it where it says that.
We could ask him to come down, $600.
Yeah.
Well, I'm concerned about making sure that this thing gets,
$600 out of $26,000.
Well, I think it needs to get done before the winter. I mean, that's.
It's already gone through one winter, right?
Yeah.
I know it says in here that we could, we do need to submit invoices. If for some reason the invoices came in less, we're not able to profit from this, so we would have to give some money back. We've already received this $26,000. And on the same opposite side of the coin, if that went over, we could resubmit that. I'm sorry, I'm just not seeing it in here right off, but.
The company didn't know we got that amount of money.
No. It's actually.
Pretty wild.
Right,
That
exactly.
close.
Yeah. And ACES was somewhat less than that. But the other great thing, the required thing is that he's carrying, the workers' comp insurance coverage for all of his employees, which we didn't have before.
I'm not clear, if it's going to be $600 more, you're going to ask the insurance company to pay that extra $600?
Well, we can submit that additional invoice and be reimbursed for that amount
You mean, by whom?
by the insurance company.
I've never heard them doing that.
It's,
like they give their number
well, let me
and that's
concentrate
it.
on it, I will read it for, it is VLCT, it's Vermont League of Cities and Towns, their insurance wing, so to speak,
Yeah,
which we
right.
cover all of our stuff for.
I'm
doing
very skeptical. Not that that's a huge.
No, it's a
amount of
good
money,
question.
but
It's a good question.
I don't think that that is something insurance companies do.
Not generally after they've paid out.
Right.
Yeah, that's your lump sum, that's what you do.
I'm channeling Terry at the moment. And her position on this has been that the more we get reimbursed by our insurance companies for these kinds of claims, the more our insurance costs go up.
Yes.
But that is also a global statement for every single.
Everybody in GLCT, exactly.
Yeah, so us submitting it
Yeah,
is one drop in the bucket, and that's
Sure.
what insurance is for.
it's just
Yeah.
lots
Do
of
we
drops.
have other capital funds we can make up with the $600?
Well, there's potential. When we first started doing about this, we were pretty clear that we wanted this to happen absent tapping into the town funds.
Right.
We're talking $600 out of 26,000.
Yeah, right.
And here's what it says. It says if the actual cost is more than the 26,552, I will need a detailed breakdown of the invoice showing material costs and labor. I would then submit this to Colonial Adjustments for further review of a possible supplement payment to the town. So it's possible.
So it's
It's
possible.
not. The other option would be to say, hey, now we are in the process, there's a group formed to work as a nonprofit to rehabilitate that building, and we say, hey, we need to go out there and look for $600.
Big sales.
Bake sales. I mean, I'm thinking with Tom, with $600 cost is fairly, it still is our asset, it's a town asset, whether or not any other organization runs it, rehabilitates it, we should
I think
make
that's
the
a
best
good point,
effort
Tom, you're
to.
waving at me.
I would hate to hold it up, but it's 2.3% of the total,
Max the max.
2%.
So here's the question. The question is, deviating only slightly from our previous position of not funding this, would the board entertain a motion to give Greg permission to go ahead and spend that extra $600 predicated on first an attempt to ask the insurance company for reimbursement? Understanding that if say no, then it comes out of the coffers, and then I get yelled at by Terry for about a month.
Mhm.
I support that, sure.
So we have a motion to that effect, probably in less
I'll
words.
make the motion that you just. No, I'll make a motion to authorize Greg to move forward with the bid from Primo Roofing.
Yep.
For 26, what is it? 26.
It is $26,195.23.
That
That
number.
number, yes. 26,195.26.
Did you get that, Sarah?
Yeah, I already wrote it down before.
Okay.
And I'll make the effort to, I'm sorry, go, yeah.
I was just gonna second it.
So we have a second. All in favor to go forward? Oh, I'm sorry. Any further discussion?
Yes.
Yes.
Did we or could we find out when we said to go ahead with this, were we real firm on not using any other monies from the town, tax money?
Yes.
Was that part of the deal or were we asked that by?
When we were discussing doing this, I tried to be as
No, it's
clear as
not
possible.
right. I mean, interrupt.
Yeah, I was a very strong proponent of not putting any more money in that building, but if we could do it the way Greg's going about doing it, my sense of that is that your point that it is a town building, that we're $600 off of having a possibly usable structure, right now it's not. You all are moving at least in the direction of getting something of value for this. I would be inclined to, as much as I choke on words, resubmit my position and suggest that the town might benefit from that extra $600 more than I would have suspected.
Was that just your position?
I don't know, that's what I can support what I was saying, because I remember saying it. But how we as a group, you'd have to
I
cover.
recall it was our goal, I don't know how
Yeah.
formally stated it.
Oh, I wandered around for days saying over my dead body, so
So
apparently.
you
I-
felt very strongly about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that we're talking about, if it had been a lot more than that, I'd be against it, but for $600, we will have something that you guys are putting the time and energy into making it work. I'd support that, against my previous.
And I can submit this to them and back to VLCT to, we'll make an effort to
After we see what the actual
to get
cost is.
that to come back, so.
Yeah, if it goes over $600,
Yeah.
Then
we
we're-
have to come
then
back
we're
to
in-
the
Then we have
drawing
nowhere to go,
then we have nowhere to go, you know.
yeah.
So we want to have as close a tight contract with these guys as possible, with the understanding that anything over that $600 is going to kill the project, which would be a shame, because it's,
Yeah, and then, well, then we look at some other options.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's no, I mean, we've had an assessment of the building, so it's not likely that there's gonna be some hidden things in there, but it's always possible.
Sure, these things happen.
You know, 6 people in town give $100 each, you know?
Yeah.
Sometime.
We'll start fundraising right tonight.
We've got 2, 4, we could take up the colors tonight.
Patrick will come over and bang some boards in, right?
That's the way, right?
Ask them to cut in half, meet them halfway.
Yeah, we'll split the difference.
All right, so the questions on the table, all in favor, any further discussions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No opposed, 3 in favor? So it carries. So that will give you that 600 to work with, and hopefully that's enough. And I will be scolded, but. Next item.
Broad shoulders.
I wouldn't go that far. We had a comment, a question that was put to us by, hi kids. This is the next group of Jamaica citizens. We're training them to be loving, kind, patient folks.
Excellent.
Last meeting, Bob Stomsky, who is our fire chief, asked some questions about traffic following their GPSs into the woods. And I've talked to the town, the roads foreman and the road commissioner, and I have some information. Oops, you're still there, yeah. At this point, Craven and Howard both have signs that say no outlet. Turkey Mountain Road has a sign saying no outlet. Dairy Brook Road has a sign saying no outlet. What is this? Oh, King Road actually is posted on West Hill, but it says no outlet. They did a study on this during around 2014-ish, I'm not sure exactly when, and they're going around and they're going to make sure it's up to speed before December. But as you were talking about people on Craven and Howard, there's a sign saying that people are driving past no outlet signs. So at least it's posted. So,
Now, is there one on Dalewood?
I don't know if there is one or not. These are the ones he could remember we're talking about. But he's gonna tour and make sure. So make sure that people aren't trapped.
Didn't that road come out on Traeger, that would be the no outlet sign would be on that property?
No. The Traeger makes a loop also. I'm sorry. This would be at the split where Wonder Lane and Dalewood. If you go
Right.
to the left, the next house on the right side, up his driveway is where that trail starts.
Okay.
So it's literally on somebody's property that the road goes up to.
I
So
thought there was a road that came out at the Latour residence. That's where that Sherman Williams truck ended up, that I was telling you about. I thought that's where your guy ended up.
no, this was on
Okay, I'm sorry.
King Road.
And in your, yes.
I have a question about Turkey Mountain Road. You're right, that we have on the, what is it?
No outlet.
No outlet. However, the problem is GPSs for people coming over from the Chester area. And what they do is they come, what's the road where?
West Hill,
Yeah.
Wyndham Hill Road.
Yeah,
West Wyndham Road.
yes. Well, they come off of Wyndham Hill
Yeah.
Road and take a right, which goes past the ponds, but that
Right.
one still keeps going till you get to the falls.
Right.
And that's where the road, Turkey Mountain Road, actually comes out, is right by the falls. So I don't know whether there needs to be, it's not passable, but does a sign need to be there for cars or trucks or trailers, or not trailers, but jeeps and things like that would go
Would
over
it
that
hurt to put
road?
a sign out there saying no outlet also, or just,
Yeah,
Let's discuss it with Lexa or with Keith.
yeah, have them check
Have
that.
them check.
Check
okay,
that area too.
okay. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I do, I think instead of making the right turn where the old sawmill used to be, I think it's a left turn.
Yes, it's a left turn.
And I've never been really up that way.
Yeah, and that eventually, that is Turkey Mountain
That's the
Road.
old
That's
Turkey
the
Mountain
old road that went to Chester back in the 1800s.
You can get through it on a Jeep, you
Yeah.
won't get through it on a car. You get on, you have some Jeep tracks.
Yeah, right, and we do. We have a lot of them that are doing that. This summertime, we had 2 or 3 Jeeps that were going up and down the
That's good to
road
know.
several days, so.
So,
Well, let's, go ahead.
we talked about putting up, your GPS is wrong sign, as
Yes.
well as the no outlet, just to sort of, my GPS said so, but it says no outlet,
Yeah.
I can make it through or whatever.
And that's the
So
major
maybe
problem
there's a way to
with,
stop that.
It is,
with Mountain Road.
his response to that was that the state doesn't like us to say GPS is wrong.
Oh.
Because technically, we know it's wrong. We don't know it's wrong. But it came down to a sign thing. There's a course that they have, he went to, in fact, Bill's gonna go to it, I think this week or next, about the signs that we can use and the ones they recommend, things that they tell us not to use. And one of the things was that one. He thinks that the one that I saw on Mallory was put up by some of the people who live there, and then it was taken down by, who knows how. But he said the correct sign is no outlet, as opposed to your GPS is wrong.
Would it make sense to have one at the ends of the roads though too, to say town maintained road ends here or that kind of thing? I mean, because someone may not be looking at a sign 3 miles back.
Well, that's the problem. They may not be looking.
That's the thing, like Turkey Mountain's a long 4 or 5
Yeah,
mile
right,
road,
5
you miss that
miles.
sign, you keep going, and all of a sudden you get to the end and
Yeah.
you go straight
No,
up.
then you have to put it someplace where there's a turnaround available. That's
Right at the
something.
end of Turkey Mountain, there's a turn right
There is
there.
one up
This
there.
is where the sign is, this
But
road-
that's a good
road
point.
ends.
I mean, move it further up.
Maintain road ends, yeah.
Someplace where there's a place where they can turn around. Because I know we get in a position periodically in fire business where we're having to stop people. We'd stop them back where they can turn around, not necessarily where the fire is. So that sort of thing is something we can take into consideration. I would think that she could talk to Keith about checking on that issue as well. Because I'm not sure how they determine where to place it, or if he was even responsible for placing it. But he is promising me a revisit before the winter. So, let me make myself a little note here. Alrighty then. Next, anything else on this topic? That's moving on. We got a letter today from SEVCA, in fact, it arrived. SEVCA is the Southeast Vermont Community Action. And they're saying, and I'm reading it because it's short and quick. Dear Selectmen, and women, they did say that. Making sure that, never mind. We are in receipt of the town's check in the amount of $950 on behalf of the Southeastern Vermont Community Action. I would like to thank residents of the town of Jamaica for their commitment to help their neighbors in need. This contribution will help SEVCA continue to pursue its mission of reducing the causes of and moving toward the elimination of poverty, and it's signed by Stephen Geller, Executive Director. Next item is public concerns. We have lots of public. Anybody concerned?
So they added on, there's one more add.
Update on the bridge.
Oh, I'm sorry, you can do that first. Yes, I apologize for that. I
No,
forgot to put the
no
note in.
problem. So just a quick update, no earth shattering, it's not finished yet, but, Joel and I took an opportunity to go up to Barry today. We were supposed to schedule it was supposed to be scheduled later this week, so therefore, the horse before the cart, so to speak. But it was a very positive meeting we had. I wanted to go to kind of get a sense of what's going on. There's obviously been lots of discussion back and forth about what this means, what that means, the engineer's report and that kind of thing. So we met with Wayne Simmons, who's the director of transportation and chief engineer for the state, and also Kristen Higgins, who's the structural and hydraulics engineer. And just coincidentally, she was the chief engineer at this bridge here after Irene, so she knows the town. It was a very engaged conversation. And my belief was that having us engaged in the conversation rather than getting information from them, a two-way street of all the parties involved is very beneficial for us to move toward an outcome that we'd like. We got a better understanding of their process, both for selecting bridges, also their engineering report and how that's put together, because there was some question there of how the Army Corps report could be so different. They took that as very valid conversation or valid input. The positive thing is we know a project number has been assigned to this. and that was the initiative where we received survey at the beginning. They were very thankful for us and for Joel's time and effort to put that into that. A lot of people hadn't done that, so I think we walked away feeling great. That we got to meet the people. They were very appreciative of us coming up there. I wanted to bring that up prior to us going, but obviously things don't happen that way. But I think it was great for the town to know that we're concerned about that bridge. They're very open to many ideas, partnerships, keeping all the basically all the stakeholders involved. So I thought it was very, very beneficial.
So what did you come back with that would help us understand whether they're going to fix it or not?
Well, they did talk about some timeframes, and they can't commit. He's got hundreds of bridges on his table. And we didn't go up there demanding that we get our bridge done now. That was the absolute furthest from our thing. We came back with one that we have a personal relationship with somebody. That's my thing that I feel strongly about, to go and talk to these people rather than just emails and whatnot. We did go through, how the engineering process, the measurements they take. Not quite literally what they're doing there, but how this all goes into a pretty sophisticated program to generate a 9 out of 10 and a 3 out of 4 and those types of things. And to talk about, they asked what we'd like to see there. What our goals were. We want to keep it aesthetically pleasing. It does have some historic significance. We obviously wanted to meet the standards of, the weight standards, to be able to, get utility vehicles over there, the fire trucks and the oil trucks and things like that, and to, a safety concern. Not quite literally the bridge now as far as safety goes, but future bridges and the width. They talked about, town trails and pedestrian traffic on the bridge and things like that. And I'm taking this as a collective whole of, there's a dozen things that we are working on in tandem to try to elevate this town, and transportation and ease of access to recreational opportunities is a huge thing. But it's not literally, we didn't take out, here's a thing, we're gonna have it done next week, but it was part of a conversation. I thought it was.
Excuse my ignorance, but what bridge are we talking about?
Some people refer to it as the State Park Bridge, the Depot Bridge, the Iron Bridge, the one, the
West River?
The West River, right, exactly, yeah. And so it's been evaluated for years. We know it needs some repairs or replacement, and so we're working on those to try to get something that we want out of it in a reasonable sense of time.
Good. Excellent. Any other questions? Thank you, sir. Okay, public, you're up. I have a public, yes. Identify yourself to the camera, please.
Hi, my name is Brian Zeroff. I'm a resident here in Jamaica. I'm a member of the Planning Commission, and I'm a nationally certified professional hydrogeologist. I want to make a public statement about the recent water supply approval process. I've been in the position of giving presentations just like VHD, and I currently act as a groundwater consultant for planning commissions in upstate New York, reviewing their applications, providing input. The biggest challenge that I've seen when dealing with technically complex issues is making sure that people are properly informed before they make a decision. And knowing that it's the statutory duty of the Planning Commission to take on this process, I was very excited to use my experience to provide a contribution to the town that I live in. I could volunteer to do this. Pretty happy for that. But after the RFP, I felt like the Planning Commission wasn't really involved in this effort. What I witnessed was something that, in my professional opinion, excuse me, fell short of what was needed. Overall, the two-phase approach established in the RFP, which we designed to allow for this highly technical issue to be better understood, seemed to be abandoned for a one meeting and a vote at the same time. It seemed like a rush to the finish line, and to me that that put it in a position that I felt would only have one outcome. And during the meeting, there were misstatements and technical inaccuracies that I believe had an impact on the public. In the intro, there were statements made about the Dufresne report, indicating that our water is adequate. This had a direct impact on the public because someone said if the water is adequate, why are we going through this process? We have prominent buildings in town that during the application to a water permit have been told you can't continue in the way that you're operating. We also have an empty building where under a permit application, it looks like they might have to stay empty. I don't think they would think that it's adequate. Not one direct statement was made during this educational period as to the regulations that apply to water in Jamaica, including the State Department of Health and the Division of Water. Chrissy was able to allude to them under questioning during answers like she was pulling them in, but it's hard to really know what they mean under that type of scenario. And these regulations clearly identify shortcomings and restrictions that this town has right now. But I don't believe that they are clear to the public. And these state regulations can really come into play when you go to sell your property. I think that's one of the biggest important things here. You may be operating in a current scenario, maybe under a grandfather clause, but a buyer will not get those advantages, and you might be stuck with that building. Or it'll just be difficult to sell. And even specific things where it was indicated that we couldn't put a well in the property across from the school because it was in the floodplain. But that's not true. Our flood regulations allow for permitted work in the flood zone. And that's something that, with the proper permit, we totally could do. And I know that person was directly affected by that answer. Actually, let me correct myself, I don't know. But they didn't get the answer that they should have received. All in all, I feel like the Planning Commission could have helped to maybe avoid some misstatements. But like I said, our contribution seemed to end with the RFP. I don't know why. We even asked to be placed in the select board agenda to present research on this subject, and we never made it on the agenda. What I want to say tonight, what I wanted to say is that I wanted to say that we needed to right the ship and do a redo, but I think that ship is sailed. So what I'm going to say instead is that I have a challenge for the select board. Work with us. Work with the Planning Commission in tackling these important issues. It is a clear state statute where the state statute directs the Planning Commission to take a leadership role in planning for infrastructure upgrades. And our Jamaica Town Charter directs the Planning Commission to work independently of the Select Board as we try to help you along in this process. I want you guys to recognize what we're doing to try to help you with these efforts, because we should be all working together to make sure that's the best effort put forth. And that's basically it. Let us help you achieve these town initiatives, no matter how they go. We just want to work together. Thank you.
Any questions? I have one concern here, and I want to make sure we're clear about this. I don't remember being asked by the Planning Commission for speaking time at that meeting.
Can I clarify that, please?
Please, because I called it in the meeting.
I did bring to you early on in the end of August or in September, the synopsis of what Chris's research had done, and that was the important research that Brian's referring to. And we needed to get that information before the select board so that it could be discussed, so that we could make it public, so that people could be better informed.
Did we not have a discussion here in the select board with him here as well regarding that very topic? That we brought it to the select board.
I never saw it.
Not that I know of. He described the work that he was doing, but he was not able to present the full thing with the PowerPoint presentation and all of the slides and the tables that he had worked on.
I'll have to go back and review the minutes. I remember you and he here, and I remember I'll go back and make sure I sent it out to everybody, but
He was describing the work that he
you
was
were describing it for
not
him.
the results of it.
I'm sorry?
He was describing the work that he was doing
Right.
to create this, using a statistical analysis to basically determine the tax impact of what a water system might do for the town. And its effect on real estate values and how, given different assumptions, real estate values would be changed and elevated because of a system like that. That was not able to be presented in its entirety.
That's correct. I'm sorry, Bob and I are got our brain shifted into over here. Sorry. As I recall, and you guys correct me if I'm mispresenting how we work on this, the information, the numbers that he used, well, fine for hypothetical statistical analysis, weren't accurate, sufficient for us to make a decision.
The numbers that he did use were derived from the presentation that the two people from the state of Vermont, the Agency of Water Resources, had given to them as scenarios.
I think that, yeah, I can't remember exactly what numbers they gave. I do know that one engineer told me the cost was 100 to 100. No, he's a cost of 100 to 125 a foot to transport the water, and as she said, it's closer to $300 a foot. And there was some other things in there. It got to a situation where this was going to be germane if we move forward. I understand completely that asking people to make a decision about $200,000 before they know what it's going to cost to get to their house is awkward. But there was no choice for us because none of us, nobody, could give us hard numbers about what it was going to cost to move water to the center of town if we don't know from whence it cometh.
I think we're losing the point here. So
Well,
because they never did present this. Chris never, like Rebecca said, talked about that he was doing this, but it was never presented to us.
His conversation, the last letter
as a formal presentation.
The last letter I got from him was that he was trying to show us how the formula would work in the case of the solid numbers. That's the last letter I got from him after the meeting. And I understand that. However, at the point where we were to try to get solid numbers for people to satisfy the answer of how much it's going to cost for me to get water to my kitchen sink, the formula was...
I think we weren't even to the point of close to solid numbers. We
had nothing.
I think what Brian is saying too, and Rebecca, is that there was a lot of information that still was out there that was solid. And some of the stuff going forward was hypothetical. And I'm not gonna discuss and debate the detail of that, but just in general, I think there could have been a lot more information presented to educate us, and I take fault with that personally, but also to educate the rest of the town. I do not think it was a very well-educated decision that the town made. I mean, there was a lot of information that they still could have had. That's just a blanket statement. I'm not going to dig into the numbers, what was right, wrong, or what, anything like that, but that's just my opinion.
I can say that I never saw the report. I saw the 2 pages minutes before the meeting. My understanding is a 40-page document. I never saw 40 pages from Chris.
40-page document.
Chris made assumptions going from a low well cost to a high cost, and ran statistical analysis, balancing tax rates, value of property, the whole thing. He has done this his whole life long.
Yeah.
That's
It was still a range and an estimate and all that, but
Yeah.
that still wasn't presented. I mean, I think that's the point. There was a lot of information that could have been presented.
We could have been there for 3 solid hours trying to present hypotheticals.
Well, no, I think we need to step back and that there's a process to present, not fully at a meeting. I mean, how that happens, it's a long process.
We had talked about spreading it out over multiple meetings, and the decision ultimately was made not to do that. But that's what I was one of the advocates of that, to say, let's vote on it at a town meeting and have meetings throughout the fall, back from our July meeting. you know,
And
it didn't win out, so.
If the planning commission wanted something put on the agenda and say, we forgot or didn't hear anything about it, why wouldn't you just ask again?
I did.
Why?
She did.
When?
She did, multiple times.
let's keep it to minimum. When I put the agenda together, when we put the agenda together.
No, I mean, in the meantime, before this meeting.
Oh, sure. I mean, it's been warned for what, 30 days, 35 days?
Yeah.
Yeah, but before that even. I mean, did
Well,
you,
they did
did you just
use
come up
one
with
day.
this in like the week before? Or were you working on it for weeks and weeks and weeks and
Over the
weeks?
summer, it was over the summer.
Well, I'm asking him. Listen, I don't want a bunch of people answering me. But I'm a little put off by that. We're blowing off the planning commission. And I'm really offended by that we would ignore some request from anything that they would like to be put on any agenda. Unless I'm sitting here totally not paying attention to anything about this water project. I don't think that I mean, if anything with that meeting, what was the name of the group that gave us the bid?
VHB.
They dropped the ball a little bit by not even projecting about what a total cost would be. With the Waits field, they didn't know what the population was. You know, I think they could have presented better and said that, you know, it might be $3 or $4 million or $1.5 million for Jamaica. No one would stretch their neck out and say, nobody would tell us.
Right.
Is it gonna be $1 million, $3 million? Come on, that's what they do for a living, and no one would say that.
Well, in my conversation with them very early in this, they said that we don't like to give you numbers that we can't support. And until you tell
Yeah,
us
but
what the
nobody
water is. Nobody wants to, because nobody wants to be committed to making up numbers that are not supported by the facts. And since nobody knew where the water was, everything else was
That's
just
the
guess.
case everybody goes.
Yeah, but
Every town.
they wouldn't have been held to that. I'm just saying, I can see the frustration with some of the people in the meeting.
Sure.
That, especially the one guy that said, listen, you guys got no idea what this is gonna, if we go forward, what this is gonna cost. And I'm sitting on this board, we asked, and no one, from Chrissy, I mean, she's great, nobody would give us a ballpark figure.
Well, even the number of 200,000 was incorrect. It was 203,000, almost 204,000. And yet that somehow it got reduced in our conversation. Why that was, I don't know.
Well, they originally said 203,990
At the most.
And that was their estimate for up to 3
Right.
billion.
I think we as a board were trying to be way too neutral in this, and that we did not come out, I mean, we have a mixed opinion on the board, and so there's pros and cons to this, and it's obviously a costly project, and we did not say what the high end would be, or the low end, or what some ranges. I'm stating that there's a lot of information that was not out there, and how or why it didn't come about, there's lots of reasons.
And more to Brian's point too, that we should be working with the planning commission in the future to address things. I support that.
Have you, anybody else on the board, had a sense that we blocked the planning commission from coming to our select board meetings?
I don't think we have.
Have any of us been to the planning commission meetings?
I know.
I have. Anybody else?
No, I haven't. I did before I was on the select.
So I'm not entirely sure that there's the schism that we're talking about, that the planning commission and the select board are operating against each other.
Not against, but not in tandem either.
Could you have a question?
No, a statement.
Thank you.
It seems to me you're arguing over a dead horse. Nothing at that meeting, at that special meeting, went according to plan. Nothing at that meeting implied whether or not we could have water. It was a short, uninformed meeting, providing no information or very little information. If an engineering firm can't provide the answers, then maybe we still need the water, but we don't need that particular firm. Maybe we need to do more research. I'm sure this project isn't dead. I'm sure this project will go on because the scientific facts state that the town needs water. So however it gets it, it has to get it from an intelligent point of view where the governance reaches out to the public and gives the public the information they need to make a rational decision. The statement that was made that, well, if we have fine water, then why do we need to do this project, was an example of why the town doesn't really know why we have to do this project. So instead of taking a shotgun vote to say we don't need this project, it's our duty to find out how to get it and if we do need it. And nobody said at that meeting that we don't need it with any intelligence.
Let me ask you a question. Do you not trust the Dufresne Group?
I'm not commenting on that.
Okay,
It's not
good.
my
Let
position.
me
It's not
say
my
no.
position to
The
trust or not
engineers-
trust the I do trust the Dufresne Group.
We-
The Dufresne Group gave a report where they say, well, if nothing happens in this town, we got enough water, which means I can go to my sink and get water. It doesn't mean that the town has adequate water to continue its position. And nobody said that.
She
But they
said that.
No, she didn't say the town had adequate water. She gave in to the fact that if nothing changes, and we want to leave empty buildings in town, and we want to have businesses failing, fine, let it die. That, in effect,
You're kind of exaggerating what she
well,
said.
but there was exaggeration of what she said in both directions.
The actual statement is we stand now, the water supply for the town of Jamaica is adequate. There might be value in getting a municipal water supply for future growth.
Well, I don't trust that statement.
Well-
I don't think it's an accurate quote. I don't think it's an accurate quote.
That's your
If I
position.
can add on.
Add to, excuse me, one time at a time. You're welcome to your position, but please don't mischaracterize the engineers. We set out an RFP, we picked an engineering firm, they did a very good job as engineers. We can
There
tell.
was mischaracterization.
And you didn't care for the results. That's okay. You're allowed to not care,
There
but
was
don't disparage.
There
Sir,
was
do not
mischaracterization.
do not disparage the character of the Dufresne Group.
I
He did
did not
absolutely
disparage.
not.
I don't think we did.
I did not disparage.
Remain.
He's not disparaging.
Moving on,
We don't heard the same.
moving on. Do you have a question?
Go ahead.
Her hand
So
up,
just-
actually.
Yes, so just to, I think to clarify this point, without finger pointing or name calling, is that Brian pointed to something very critical from a legal perspective, which is that there were business operations in our town that, because of grandfathering or frankly, not fully complying with law, have ceased operations and are attempting to either sell or reopen as a new business. So they cannot. And if anybody wants to kind of, I'll participate in a survey, whatever you need to do to verify that. But let's just assume that's the case because we're seeing these buildings. Not, can I please finish?
Before you go any further, talk about you. Don't talk about other third unnamed people.
Why? But
One business owner stood up. One business owner affected by this
Why
decision
aren't you
stood up.
letting me finish my
Because you're deviating from.
No, I'm
No,
not.
it's a statement.
No, I'm explaining the legal point, which is simply that what the Dufresne Group said is that if we are at our current operational level, so that's businesses as at the time that the report was written and homes, there's water for them, right? But if someone ceases operations or tries to sell their property, Dufresne did not make any statement about whether they would either be able to continue to operate in that way, or if once sold, they could start operations again. They were not asked to do that, and they did not say that the water would be adequate. And we do all know, I mean, I think we can all kind of stop like pretending. There is an issue with some buildings in our town, and that we all know that. So that's that point. I think rather than, I think we can all kind of level set there. As a town resident and owner, what I had thought was gonna happen for the whole process was that it would be an information session. The last meeting that the planning commission did have jointly with the select board, that was discussed, there'd be an information session, and then there would be a vote. And more importantly, the RFP that I reviewed, actually marked up when we were all together, had two phases. So it had an initial phase that was approximately $20,000. And then probably, likely, based on that, it would then grow to a total of about 200 and change. whatever that number was. But it was a two-phased approach. And what was really beautiful about that two-phased approach was that by the end of just the 20,000, we would know a huge more about what were we looking at. Was it even reasonable to go to the next step? Or what came out of that? So a range of opportunities, one which might cost less than $1 million, could be fully funded by the state/federal funding, or one that would cost $10 million and would have, after 5 or 10 years, an appreciable effect on taxes. So we couldn't say that today, but what we could say to the townspeople is, do you want to spend $21,000, $22,000 to get us to a point where we would know what we were looking at? And to me, and by the way, a lot of folks in town, Brian is one of them, Chrissy is another, plus, quite frankly, from a legal perspective, the firm that actually did the RFP, these people all spent a lot of time and effort out of, either volunteered or towards a reasonable reliance on our genuinely looking at this firm as giving us a bid. And the way the meeting was set up and the fact that we didn't follow that process that was laid out when we were all last together, really, to me, just doesn't value those contributions. And I think that there might be, there's feelings that are hurt when people put a lot of time and effort, they care about the outcome. And then that's how the resolution was presented, how the meeting was run. And it was, it was disappointing. And I think really what Brian is just saying, Paul, is there's so much, we have so many resources here, between legal and engineering and just people who really care. They have heart for the town. I would think that we could all work together and have those resources.
Let me ask you a question. Predicated on what you're saying, that after 20,000, we wouldn't have to go any further.
We might not, the answer might be, it doesn't make sense.
Correct. The charge for that meeting was to tell the select board whether or not to go forward up to $203,990 and some change. It was explained at the time there were two phases, phase 1 and phase 2. You're suggesting that the audience wasn't smart enough to figure out after phase 1 we would stop paying money.
I didn't suggest that.
What are you suggesting?
I suggested that it could have been presented in a two-step process, which is what was discussed at the select board.
Did VHB not say this will be in 2 steps? After the end of the first phase, we will then decide whether to go forward?
If you're willing.
When it was a one-phase process.
Absolutely.
We're voting on the 200,000, which is a lot harder pill for people to swallow than 20,000.
Without knowing.
It was
Without knowing other information.
Right.
Yes. Oh wait, next up.
She's next.
Thank you. I would like to go on record as saying that I was absolutely dismayed by the vote at the end of the meeting on October 15th. I can't imagine any business, any family-run business or any corporation making a decision on an approximately $250,000 in money within an hour. That's an absurdity, and it's an insult. I've got a master's degree, so I consider myself at least partly intelligent, and I did not have enough information to vote yes on that proposal after that meeting session.
Sarah, was that the issue?
I have a little more to say, please.
Oh, I'm sorry, if I could stop.
Thank you. I think what was generated in that process, which was very emotional more than anything else, was a whole lot of questions. I came away from that with lots of questions, which continue to evolve over the last couple of weeks. I did not feel that the engineer was able to answer the question to my satisfaction, which I asked the question, at 60 gallons per minute, are we going to have just the existing development restored, or are we going to have new development? She wasn't able to answer that question. That's a very important point. There was no discussion of grant monies or any other available funding options, which is clearly mentioned in the proposal. We had no discussion of other funding. What about a representative from Regional State Planning Commission? We might need some help. Let's get it. Let's get somebody in here. And then to the more personal level, people who didn't want to pay for tying in when they couldn't use the water themselves, how about discussion of who's gonna actually finance this in the town. And how is my well gonna be taken out of service? That's also mentioned in the survey. Other wells will be taken out of service. That's a very important point. There are a lot of questions. I'm just touching the tip of an iceberg on all the questions that can be generated. In my experience with planning, the way it breaks down is you have multiple sessions over weeks, maybe over months. And those are in small groups with professionals who lead the meeting, and people are comfortable to ask questions and get really clear answers before they're asked to vote. We could vote on this at town meeting day. Why are we pushing this through in an hour after $7,000 spent on a water study? That's not fair to everybody in the town. That's not a good, responsible use of the taxpayer money. And as to the feelings, let's look at property valuations. Property valuations will go down if we continue to allow our central beautiful little Jamaica to decline. Got a lot of empty buildings, can't sell them. We've talked a little bit about that tonight. Let's consider the property valuations, how we're going to continue to pay for services in the town if we don't keep up and running these historical buildings.
Quick comment. Sarah, did we not have the frame report online? Do you remember?
I put the frame reports
yes.
online.
Did we also put the VPH bid
That's
online?
correct.
And I did
So
read
this
both.
information that
I
you're
did
saying.
read both of those, and that's not answered in that.
Well, let me go one piece at a time. We've been talking about this for a year. Usually we're talking to an empty room. I'm glad to see you all here. The other piece of it is, we put our information online. Tom did it. It's been available. If anyone took the time to look at it.
I read both.
Good, so you came informed. But the population, we can't sit down with everybody and say, did you or did you not read this? We put it out the best we can. Number two, there was a representative from RPC. Chris Campany couldn't make it, he had another one, but there was a woman there from RPC to answer any questions anybody had.
I didn't know she was there.
She introduced herself.
Yeah. The second piece, and this is when you said there was no talk about finance. Didn't Chrissy stand up and talk about finances?
Yes, and grants.
That was one option. We didn't, delving into that, that was not even a minute's commentary on something that's really a big decision. Those decisions are not made in just an area like that. You have to have a small meeting and really get the numbers on paper. Rebecca's talking about wonderful work that Chris did. He really crunched numbers. Let's look at those numbers. And the financing
I was
numbers.
gonna say, I think there's obviously a lot of passionate people, both sides of the issue. And me here, I want to thank everybody for their opinions. This is to be continued. I mean, obviously, 200 years from now, we might be talking about this still, but I mean, it's going to evolve. Us refuting or refuting. Yeah, but to refute every little piece of information, I mean, obviously, it wasn't a beautiful meeting. There was probably a lot of information there on both sides of the coin, and I fully support the project. I'm not afraid to say that, but I also wanted the meeting to give the information, whatever side you were on, and I think there was a lot of stuff, like Brian alluded to, that was when people are answering questions from the crowd or making statements. I mean, there's a lot of stuff out there that wasn't accurate, and there was a lot that was accurate, but as anybody walking to that meeting, they don't know which is right or wrong. And I think we gotta swallow hard and not necessarily take it personally. I mean, everybody's in this together, so, I'm not saying what's right or wrong, but I don't think we right now should be refuting every little comment that comes out. Thank you for your comments.
Well,
Thank you.
You had a question next?
It was a bit confusing. The whole meeting was very confusing. And what I would like to say is, how did we get to this point when somebody proposed coming up with public water for the village? Or were there other options that we've talked about prior to? I think there are an awful lot of options available to us, instead of spending possibly 1.5 million or 10 million or whatever on city water, when we can secure the septic systems in the village And we can also secure some kind of cooperative wells within the village, which would make a lot of sense to me, that the homeowners and business owners in the village take responsibility for what they have, so they're not spending $2,500 a year for public water. They can have water with the cooperative being 5 people or 10 people, or whatever it might be. Why haven't we even looked at the opportunities that are obvious to us? I know as a homeowner that I'm taking care of my responsibilities with sewage and water, and I know that my water can't be close to my sewage, and we have state guidelines to do that. So there's probably, I'm not sure about this because this isn't my expertise, but there's probably, 5 wells in the village that can take care of the water that's going to be untainted in the village, and there's going to be probably 5 or 10 septic systems that can handle the output of gray and wastewater. So I'm just wondering why we haven't even thought about that, or maybe we have thought about it, and maybe it's been poo-pooed or whatever.
Well, it wasn't poo-pooed. There are a number of residences here within the village who have collectively shared, are currently collectively sharing water or sewer systems. We, for example, get our sewage over here on Hank's place. But the issue is that was discussed. In fact, if I remember correctly, and I can't tell you how many times I read the Dufresne thing, but that she may have mentioned that some of the wells were if not co-located, at least shared. So that was discussed as a existing system that people are using, and the suggestion was, why can't we just expand on that? And that becomes individual stuff, as opposed to the town's responsibility to enforce it.
Bravo.
Does that from what you guys remember the conversation? Please understand, I don't want to get defensive in here, but we've been talking about this for what, a year now?
And I'm sorry I'm Johnny come lately.
Well, you're always welcome.
But it would just make sense to me that we continue our talks about that rather than the incredible amount of money that it's going to cost to bring water to the village. And we know it's going to be a lot of money.
Yeah, and I think that's us as representing the whole town presents this is the big thing, and then it's maybe up to several individuals and community organizations to find those unique solutions within their own areas.
It might be the select board that recommends to property owners in the village that we can get some funding from state or federal or whatever it may be to try and research that and do what we need to do to make that happen.
Some other solutions.
I would think, even the townspeople would probably be willing to help the village people pay for added expenses within the village. I mean, we want to make the village healthy. We would, I know as a taxpayer, I would consider and probably share in those expenses.
Thank you. I think that makes sense. I have no problem. I don't think any of us have a problem with that. The issue that we ended up chewing on was this municipal water supply because it had a fairly strong presence in our atmosphere. People were coming to talk about that. The people upstream that voted no, ultimately the 2/3 of the town that said no, weren't here all the time to become part of the conversation as much as we were kind of representing everybody as best we could. But you're exactly right. So much of their small pockets of things throughout Vermont, where the locals have gotten together and done their own thing without state regulation, without somebody implementing a forced process. You know what I'm talking about?
I would welcome the state staying out of it, and I would welcome the town of Jamaica taking the responsibilities and helping the village people do what they have to do.
Yes.
The problem that has to be solved is the fact that buildings have, it's a very tight village. There's not a lot of area. That septic tanks are less than 100 feet from wells. So the problem, I don't think anybody wants to spend $1 million if they don't have to. The problem is, how do you get water to the town separated from the septic? And if there's a better way to do it than bringing a pipe in from the mountains or putting a septic system in, that would be ideal because it would cost less money. The question is finding out how to separate the water from the sewage. Any building here, the restaurant across the street can't have seats because there's no place they can drill a well.
I'm talking about a cooperative well.
Absolutely.
Maybe 500 or 600 feet away from that restaurant.
Well, that becomes right. That becomes
we do know how to engineer septic systems to take care of the wastewaters, and we are doing it throughout the town. So I'm talking about cooperative waste systems for the village.
I don't think anyone would object to that if it were possible.
In fact, on that note of agreement, that discussion that you two are having, that we're all witnessing, is the kind of discussion that would, I think, move us further in the direction of accomplishing what ultimately we all want, and that's growth in town. That conversation wasn't happening all like that, because the two groups are somewhat distant. I think now, I agree with what you said, or somebody said that this thing isn't dead. You all have an opportunity to bring it back. The question is, it needs to come back, in my mind, taking into consideration the 2/3 of the town that said no. Did they say no out of ignorance or out of knowledge that I don't want to pay for?
Can I just interject one thought? It was 78 people said no.
And
Not
32
2/3.
said yes.
Right, and
So
those are the only people that showed up.
My point is, as I put out at the time, these decisions in this town since the day I took on this job have been built around who shows up.
Well, that's not a
And if one does not show up, one does not always get the voice. We are here 2 weeks, every other week, to an empty room. This kind of discussion, this kind of participation is welcome. We've never chased anybody out of here. We struggle with these ideas because we're trying to come up with a plan that helps everybody in town, not just one faction or another. Please, the discussion, keep it going. But I think what John's talking about, did you introduce yourself, by the way?
I'm sorry.
To the camera.
I'm sorry. John Raculano,
There it is.
West Jamaica Road.
Yeah. That kind of a conversation, I think, is extremely important in this town. At a pace and a tone, by the way, which I really appreciate. Were there any other hands? Anybody's waiting. Did you have your hand up earlier?
No,
No?
I have other business.
Oh, other business. Oh, we'll get to it here. Sorry. All right.
Sweet.
So, do not lose faith. We are not tossing you aside. You're far too valuable to the planning commission. We don't want you losing faith. Don't take it personal. The issues need to be done. I apologize if somehow in my neglected to ask everybody in town, do you want to make a statement? Clearly everybody could have, because I called on several people. In fact, Greg did a pretty good job of calling on several people. I believe you had a chance to talk that night. Did you not?
I did.
Yes. We appreciate that, because we know you've got the expertise. Anyway, yes, sir.
It's not all Paul, all right? Paul's speaking right now. We have sat here and really talked this thing over. Have we not?
Yeah.
I mean, whether the outcome of the people here or other people that were for it being defeated are not here, we have the responsibility to do what's best for the town or follow the town's wishes. And we really were like, you know, just constantly trying to come up with more ways, especially more members than others, to get information out and figure this thing out and not drag it too long, and not push it through. I mean, we have sat here and talked this over.
And we put the whole meeting off a month to give people more time to come up with more information. I think that was one of the questions you'd asked us a couple months ago.
Initially, yeah, I mean,
I will say, he asked to talk at the meeting and was put down to talk.
Who was it?
Brian.
Brian.
He asked if he could talk, and he said, let's let everyone present.
Wait a minute.
And Karen asked if he could stand up. And he said no.
Hold on.
It was just Karen. It was Karen.
Karen asked.
Karen asked,
Karen asked.
Could he-
and
could he
it was
present?
rejected.
Yeah.
Wait, I'm sorry, I lost it. Karen asked to speak?
If he
No,
could speak.
Karen asked if Brian could join the professionals and
Who did
be
she
someone
ask?
to respond. She asked Greg Jolly said,
No, Paul.
No, she asked Paul.
She asked
Oh.
you if me as a hydrogeologist could be on the technical board discussing hydrogeology. And you said, let's see,
When did that happen?
during the meeting.
In the beginning of the
Your answer was, let's see how it goes, and we'll bring them up.
I don't recall that, but I certainly.
Sounds
like
That's just like, well, we had an agenda or
Well, we were trying to control it. I mean, part of the issue, we were afraid it was gonna get out of control. And it didn't. We can thank Greg Jolly for that. Okay. Anything else? We should chat. On this topic. Other than that, we have an additional public in the back who's sitting there patiently. Yes, sir. Introduce yourself to the camera, please.
Yeah, I'm Pete Andrews, Jamaica. Over the years since the flood, I've requested that the select board look into putting some riprap on Back Street.
Whereabouts on Back Street?
That's between my 4-bay garages, roughly 120 Water Street, actually, not River, Water Street. And I brought this before the boards in 2013 and 2014 when some funding was available to do this riprap. And I've got some information that I'll leave with you guys. But basically, it got passed over. I've been waiting my turn until all the other flood issues were cleared up. And I'd like to have the selectmen look at this issue again. And I understand there is some money available for this type of thing. Now, this is rumor. I don't know if you guys have heard about it or not. I saw it someplace. And at one time in 2014, I offered to pay 10% of the cost of doing this. And I think roughly it's going to cost $20,000. And in the 2000, in 76, after the 76 flood, the state came in and put big riprap in there, 4-foot rocks, and they protected that road. After this last flood, they put in round boulders, and these are gonna just wash away. And every other place in town has been riprapped, and actually FEMA made you guys redo a couple because they were improperly done. So I would like to have this looked at and dealt with. It's protecting the town roads. I've lost 20 feet between the river and the road, which I'm glad to sacrifice if it helps protect the town road, and incidentally, my property's on the other side.
Can you do me a favor? Tomorrow, are you gonna be in the neighborhood tomorrow?
Yeah, I'm gonna be elsewhere, but in the morning I can do something.
Come out in the morning, and you know, I'll sit down, because I've got all the FEMA stuff upstairs. If they, yeah, let's talk about that, because that's gonna be some very specific stuff. I'll need to know exactly where and get some more
I
details.
got the guy from the state, I can't remember if his name is Pat or Ty, came down and looked at it.
Lebanese?
Yeah,
Okay, yeah.
and he looked at it and said, yeah, this is unsustainable, it will wash away because it's just round boulders. When they did the riprap across the river, they made a ramp down it and they filled it in with small boulders, which are even less stable.
Look, come out here tomorrow morning, because Todd Manise has been promoted out of that, but the other guy who's taking his place, his name escapes me, he's a really good guy. And I will get some information for you on that. Because
Okay.
that's still part of the
I
FEMA
got a little
stuff.
article which says you would take care of that, well, like 4 or 5 years ago, so let me give you that.
Okay.
Paul, I'm just asking, any information that you get, you share with the rest of the.
Everybody, sure.
Prior to the next meeting.
Where's the date of this? March 2014. Okay, I will research this, I'll get information to everybody, so we'll not gonna we're not gonna let that go.
What's a good time tomorrow?
I get here 8:35 timeframe.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I'll get some more specifics on that, and I'll get the names of the people we've talked to and the dates and stuff, and we can move forward. That shouldn't happen.
Okay.
Okay, if there's anything else I've forgotten? Right, SEVCA.
I'd like to bring something up real quick.
Sure.
Lou Russo came to me at the Valentine event, which, thank you, Greg, for doing that. It was really fantastic. Everyone came to see him speak at the town hall. It was really great. But he came to me and said that the wireless access point here has failed. Or not the wireless, the router failed, and we're gonna need to buy a new router.
For the town?
For up here, he took the historical foundations and we're using that temporarily, but one of the circuits is down right now.
Oh.
Yeah, so we need to buy a device. It would cost probably $100. I just want to get you guys' support. I think that we can just do that without any sort of vote.
Sure, that's something that,
Just inform people.
that's office supplies,
And
basically.
that you can do that sometime. I may just pick up the staples and
Okay,
install it this weekend.
all right, thank you, I didn't know
Yep.
that.
That's what he told me.
That could explain part of the difficult I'm having.
Yes, you're having difficulty because you don't have.
I just thought it was my skills, or lack thereof. All right, anybody else have anything else they'd like to bring up? We're going to go to executive session in a moment, but I want to give everybody the opportunity to say anything else they wanted to before we move forward.
Thank you.
Come back and see us anytime, we're here.
Thank you all.
Maybe we have to
Yes,
bring
thanks everyone
cookies.
for the great comments.
Maybe have to bring cookies to get everybody here more often.
So that being said, I move to find that premature general knowledge of personnel issue would clearly place said personnel at substantial disadvantage because the select board would potentially give information if it discusses this in public.
That's what we have to do.
Well,
Oh, yeah, no, no, no.
Now you're privy to what we have to do to.
No, I
make it-
recognized it.
Hold on a second.
I second.
Thank
Have
you.
a second, do I have any further discussion? Here, you're not going.
Hurry.
I'm
leaving town. I'm heading to Saturday or
So we
something.
have to, once we decide that that's correct, then we have.
Thus, I move that we enter into executive session to discuss said personnel issue under provisions of Title I, Section 313A1A of the Vermont statutes.
Do I have a second? Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We will take a few minutes to get to put us on that. Okay, select board is reconvened after the executive
Is
session.
that, make a motion to adjourn the meeting?
A second?
We have to reconvene and then come out of executive session
We just reconvened, didn't we?
Just reconvene, you know?
with, and state to that there is no decision made,
No decision made. No action to be taken.
no actions taken.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We stand adjourned at 8:45.